Welcome to episode 4 of Tower Dive, recorded on the 31st of July 2018. We're very sorry for the delay between episodes. It's been 2 weeks since episode 3, but if you're wondering what we've been up to, I have good news. This is the episode for you. I've been shoutcasting at the Arena of Valor World Cup, and I'm ready to tell you so much about it. Daniel has been busy maintaining a healthy relationship with sleep and will be helping me, because I haven't, break down those results. Hopefully we'll be able to get into detail as well on the upcoming meta shift as we move into a new map and a new era of competitive play. I'm TJ, joined by my co-host, writer, shoutcaster, and YouTube clickbaiter, DTwo.
Thanks for the intro, TJ. I just approve them, okay?
We decided to forgo a guest this week because of how packed our show is already, but rest assured that won't be a regular thing. Next week, we've already sliced out some time for Bill Carter, otherwise known as Jump. Let's focus on the present for now, though, Daniel, because we got the best present in the form of the AWC last week.
Yeah, the AWC went pretty well. I know you were there, and I have a few questions for you. But as far as my experience was concerned, I liked it quite a bit. I think the production was very nice. I had no issues with watching it. Sometimes when I watch production of tournaments, I get confused. I don't know what the information at the top. It was very nice to see, the first blood things, like the first Abyssal Dragon taken, all those notifications. And I think it ran pretty smoothly. That said, I'm someone who likes to watch after the fact and run at 2 times speed because I'm an impatient person. So perhaps there's things I missed. On your end, how did it go?
I thought it was... okay. On the list of cool things I've done, it's like top 1.
Already took the #1 spot.
You probably. Hands down one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do, especially casting that final in the Chinese theater.
Yeah, that final was hype as all hell, and you definitely brought it, I gotta say. And,
I think just bringing myself was enough with a final like that. One of the things I'm a little bit disappointed in, I heard it a bit on the stream because I've seen some clips since then. I still haven't had the chance to actually go through and watch the event, and I don't know if I can because it's all me casting it, and I find that insufferable. But I did enjoy some clips from the event, and I noticed that the crowd noise is noticeably worse than it was in the theater. You have no idea that theater was almost full. And they were psyched for AOV. And it was so loud in there. It was insane. And then it, didn't quite carry over to the stream.
I'm actually curious about that. Could you get a good sense of the breakdown between people who came from East and Southeast Asia? Or, how much of the percentage of the viewers were people who were just local and they liked AOV? Or, what the heck is going on here? Or... well, what do you think the breakdown was?
I ran into a lot of people who were Western AOV fans. I had a lot of people come up to me and be like, "Hey, TJ, I sure do enjoy your casting." Which, do more of that because it grows my ego. I gave a lot of people high fives. And that was sick.
Grow TJ's ego. Yes.
My ego shall encompass the entire world.
I think that's the next stage of esports, is to get those... the sound guys really getting in there and getting the sounds from the audience.
I think they had a few crowd mics. But to be blunt, I don't think they were expecting it to be as loud as it was. It sounded fine on stream. It sounded like an engaged, decently sized audience. That's not what it was. It was a room full of 400 plus people psyched about AOV and cheering every single map rotation.
Hey, we're casters. We just tell the production to do it. It's like, hey guys, can we just get some more context?
So day one, they didn't... I don't know what went wrong, but there was no bass from the commentators. So they were basically inaudible in the arena. And first off, that was super cool because even without commentary, the entire crowd was still engaged. Without commentary, people were still psyched for the game and sitting there watching. Second off, it was really fun because we got, I think, a contrast. Day one, I was like eased in. There was a crowd, but they didn't really know what I was saying. It was just kind of the level of our voices adding to the authority. And then day two, boom, they can hear every word I say, and I'm making jokes and having banter, and that was great. I've decided I need a crowd at every event I cast from now on.
Or every stream. Just have, a live audience in your house. Were you able to actually interact with the crowd between games? I have to admit, I skipped that part, so...
Our casting booth was kind of isolated from the crowd, but it was right there in it. So there were fans on both sides of us, and we could lean over and wave at them, and I gave some high fives from the casting booth. And for instance, I don't know if you caught it, you said you skipped through when I made a paper airplane with NA Hopes on it and threw it.
I saw the clip, yeah.
Okay, easily one of my top 10 favorite moments in esports. When I threw that, there was an audible "oh" from the crowd, and
oh my God.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Nice. I was just wondering if you're able to do things like, who's here for Team Korea, who's here for Team Thailand, and stuff like that. But I guess not.
So going into it, we kind of talking amongst me and Alex, Opal. We decided that was a bad idea because we simply didn't know how much of the crowd would speak English. Because like you were saying, going into the day, we didn't know who was there flying in and whatever. So we didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're like, hey guys, who's here? And nobody in the crowd understood. And we just ended up with a situation where there was no response and it sounded super lame. So we decided not to do anything like that. But having then been to the event and seen how engaged the crowd was with our commentary, I really wish we had done that. Because they were there. But between our fear of being completely not understood, which I think was invalid, and just generally my lack of crowd experience, I was like, that was my first time casting to a crowd that was engaged. I did a dream hack where I did a dream hack in E3, both of which were crowds, neither of which were there for AOV specifically. Yes, they were engaged audiences, especially at E3, but they were there because they were passing through E3. Whereas for the AWC Grand Finals, people were there specifically to watch Arena of Valor, and they were psyched for it. And that was cool.
It is also the World Championship, too, where things tend to go more straightforward and formal. Whereas you could, if AOV starts getting featured in DreamHacks and other, third-party events, then there's a lot more crowd interaction and being more casual, per se.
At DreamHacks, the casters go in a booth behind the stage, and you're completely segregated from the audience.
Oh, really? The DreamHacks, at least for Hearthstone, maybe Hearthstone's just more open and people don't care, but for Hearthstone, we're just right there in the open. So, I was yeah.
Every DreamHack cast I've ever seen or done, the casters have been segregated, so that's cool. Hopefully, hopefully I can bathe in the crowd again.
Literally.
That was the other thing. Sometimes you go to esports events and you're like, man, this crowd not great on personal hygiene. This crowd, good. We had a mixed gender crowd. Everyone there was from a variety of occupations, and it was really fun because there were so many unique people there, and they were all competent human beings. You almost couldn't tell it was an esports crowd.
They took a shower and brushed their teeth that morning. It's amazing.
You say that, but I also know you've attended Hearthstone events, so I know. You know.
There are a couple of Hearthstone players out there who maybe want to up their personal hygiene. I will admit.
During the final day of the AWC, we got our first look at the upcoming Battlefield 2.0 for Arena of Valor. There was a 30-second teaser trailer, and I was literally jumping up and down at the caster booth, but I know you're not half as excitable as I am, so was it cool for you at least?
I was confused. I was wondering whether this is going to be an additional map or if it was going to be replacing the what's it called? Antares?
The existing Antares battlefield.
Right. And also, I didn't know the mechanics. The mechanics, I'm like, there's a monster or something like that? And I was just confused, mostly. I'd be more hype if I was less confused, basically.
Here's what seems to be the assumption going round. This is not official word as to, yeah, this is true. What I do know is that I had speculative conversations of this type in front of Tencent officials who did not correct us. Now, that does not mean that they were simply not giggling internally and being like, ha, he's so wrong. But it does mean that they elected not to correct us, so I assume they're maybe right. Did
they failfish at you? Did they summon the Twitch emote failfish and hands to forehead and shake their heads?
People who use Twitch emotes in real life in, like, sentences are awful.
If I were casting the final, I'd just be like, Puggers!
So, the information I have and the general assumption going around seems to be this map will replace the existing Antares battlefield as the main mode. This map is pretty equivalent to the King of Glory map. The only notable additions that were teased there were the dragon, big, dangerous flap that you can, I assume, kill and then it fights for you. That's how it works in many other comparable games. Heroes of the Storm, I know, is entirely based around that, basically. I assume you fight the dragon, you beat it, it fights for you, and it says it, quote, attacks the enemy base.
Right. I think I like that better because it's a more concrete... Obviously, the Darkslayer is a very nice advantage, but if you fight 4v5, you're still going to lose a lot of the time, so I kind of like having an extra monster, although I do come from a HOTS background a little bit.
The summoning of creatures to attack the enemy base, like we talked about, it's a thing in Heroes of the Storm and a few other MOBAs. The main reason why that's cool is because it enables split push. You can set up a monster depending on how the mechanic works. You can set up a monster in one lane and attack a different one. It also, I think, will deal with late game stalemates. We saw it a few times during this World Cup event where a team would get incredibly close to the enemy base and then not quite be able to crack the high ground because they were just clearing wave. Well, now if you cede complete map control and just want to sit behind your towers, there's a solution.
Yeah, and that would be an indirect, a soft nerf to wave clear heroes like Kali, like Prada, like Crixie, actually, to a small extent because she's good at killing people anyway. But those types of heroes would see a slight nerf, and you wouldn't see like the long range kind of nuking type heroes as much because, you know, clearing the wave, and when it gets to late game and going around clearing the wave every single time and just turtling for forever is less viable of a strategy if you have this big hunking monster being at your door.
Before I do want to talk about Crixie and all the various meta changes, but first I want to talk about a rumor that's been going round. Now this, I have not had any discussion about in front of AOV people, so it's in no way substantiated. I want to be extra clear. This is a rumor. The rumor is that the eventual end goal for Arena of Valor is for it to be essentially synonymous to King of Glory. And most of our unique characters may be like, but King of Glory doesn't have Batman. Well, they have a character that is functionally the same as Batman, just he's like an ancient Chinese king. Which, first off, is way cooler in my opinion, but maybe I'm just biased. So, you could have a version of the game where two different people could see Batman or an ancient Chinese king and still play the game versus each other just fine. If that's true, do you think that's good or bad?
It's different for sure. I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but I just wonder, for me personally, and I know that you probably think about this as well, I think about the esports effect. And say there's a separate Chinese server and they have their own separate characters, but like everything is functionally the same, like all the patch notes are exactly the same, they just have different names. That would be so strange to go into esports events and just have like different characters depending on what region you're in.
Oh,
so that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
I don't think that's a big deal because, I mean, like, the regional broadcast will still be a regional broadcast. If you speak English and you watch the English language broadcast, then it's going to be the Arena of Valor look for the game. If you speak Mandarin and you watch the Chinese broadcast, it would be the King of Glory look for the game. And those don't necessarily need to interact because you can just engage with the broadcast that matches how you play. I don't think that's a big deal. The only place it gets maybe a little bit weird is attending live events in a different region. You end up watching the big screen, which is all characters you don't recognize. But I ultimately don't think that's an especially big deal, not only because it'll only ever affect a few hundred people at a time, because live event, but also, secondly, because you already can't really understand the commentary. So if you're dedicated enough to fly all the way to a different country where you know you're going to not be able to follow the commentary, you could probably spend a little bit of time and figure out which characters are synonymous to what, and it won't be a big deal.
So are you suggesting that in the same game, like this game played at the same time, like between, American team and the Chinese team, that American viewers would see a different skin of the game?
Yeah.
At this, watching the same, is that possible?
I mean, technically, yes. Do I know the specifications of their engine? No, but I suspect it would be. Because if you look at the comparisons, people oftentimes say this is just a reskin of this King of Glory character, and that's kind of the understood. They're taking the King of Glory characters and westernizing them so that they're more palatable to a Western audience. It's not a big deal. It's just a different skin. And if I can watch every single Crixie at the AWC use the Beach Party skin, because they were, by the way, and it was triggering me, then you can watch the Crixie in a different skin.
There are like a lot of hurdles to get over, though. Not least of which is the fact that they have gone through different patches, and so they have different abilities. A lot of them do. Like, it used to be kind of a reskin, but now they've kind of diverged off in different evolutionary paths. The two games, so I think there's a lot of hurdles, and the longer they take to do it, the less effect it will have. I think, especially if it's like 5 years down the road, then that would be like, okay, what's the point now? But if they do it soon, it's very hard to do it soon.
Well, so, DTwo, one of those major hurdles where the games are on completely different levels would be the actual map design, because the AOV map is completely different from the King of Glory map. If only we'd seen some kind of teaser trailer during the AWC that had shown that we're converting the AOV map to something more similar to the King of Glory map. If only. Purely hypothetically here. Well, the point is they may be merging, and if that's the case, once again, this is unsubstantiated rumor. If that's the case, I think that holds a very exciting future for both esports and the overall game. Let's talk more about the consequences of the AWC. Namely, the rise of Leaf Girl.
I didn't know if you were going to actually say it, or you just got excited when you wrote it.
The rise of Leaf Girl. Crixie went from a character never seen in competitive play to a staple of the meta throughout the AWC. I was actually listening to an old edition of your podcast, and you said, and I quote, "I think Crixie is a fluke. I think, it's more of a situation where people just didn't realize how powerful she was, but she hasn't actually, become that powerful." Do you renege on your words now, unbeliever?
I think just shift my words from I thought that people were overreacting to how good she got, and I thought she was, mediocre, or I thought she was a good but not great, and she went from mediocre to good. But I will take back the fact that she's great. I think she is great, but I think she went from good to great, not mediocre to great. This last patch did not completely just blow her out of the water. What happened was she got incrementally buffed, and two things happened. One is that she, finally crossed the threshold of, being really good, whereas every single incremental buff until then didn't quite do it for her. And the other thing is that pros have an outsized influence and effect on the game, right? And especially among each other. Like, if you see one pro doing something, you're going to try it yourself. I think that if for some reason, the Thai team or the Korean team, they started playing Azinka, for instance, a bunch, who also has received some buffs recently, then you'd see a similar type of effect. Now, I still believe that Crixie is better than Azinka, but you'd see something similar where even though there was nothing to deduce that the character would be that good, the fact that everyone is playing them at everyone is playing that character at a high level would have a great influence over the entire meta. And so I think that it's partially that Crixie got a lot better, and the fact that she doesn't have to build that, damagey, or if she does build damagey, it's fine because she'll do even more damage, and a lot of her damage is put into her early game, which is good because the meta right now is really, really fast, and you want to snowball immediately. That said, if the fact that pros picked her up and immediately had success with her and found a niche for her made it so that it was just a freaking tidal wave. It was just a snowball where everyone started using
avalanche, not a snowball.
An avalanche. A snowball effect, I mean. A snowball effect that turned into an avalanche, essentially. Where the players just played her more and more and more, and it became obvious to people who hadn't played her that actually she's pretty good. I do want to reiterate that all the incremental changes up to this point played a part in how good she is now, right?
It wasn't
for instance,
just
her ult,
the last patch. It was nobody was checking in as she got mildly better every patch.
Exactly. And one huge change that didn't seem that big at the time because I was like, well, she's kind of still just meh. The biggest thing was her ult. Because now you can use it as an engage and really just jump on someone. Before, you could only use her ult when you were in range of another hero, and that was really restricting. And now it makes it so much better because you can use it as a mobility to engage and run away as well is a thing.
Well, let's move on, if we can, to some specific discussion of the AWC itself. First of all, I'm vindicated because I said 2 weeks ago that Korea were going to win, and they did. And y'all doubted me.
I didn't doubt. I didn't tell you. I thought that Korea had a very good chance of winning as well. In fact, if you had asked me, I probably would have agreed with you if I had to pick one team. At the very beginning, before even the group stages.
People also lost faith when Korea went up against Thailand in the semi-finals and got bodied.
Yeah, it was one of those things where Korea, I think, underestimated Thailand, even though they've just been dominating the entire time.
Okay, I can actually provide context for this. Korea told me and Alex that they expected the final to be China versus them. So I think they did all their prep on China, expecting them to get through their quarterfinal, and then were met with Thailand and didn't know what to do.
Right, because it's a completely different playstyle.
Yeah, and then they went back home, they had a board meeting at like 3 a.m. We got back at 3 a.m. Libraries full of Korean players, coaches. There's a guy up at the whiteboard in a suit drawing lines. Investors were getting information on how their shares were doing. That's all I'm saying. And
Korea, there's no one more serious about esports than Korea. I mean, obviously it's a huge prize, but Korea knows how to get it done. If you're ever gonna pick a team in an infant esport, you should pick Korea.
Well, it was terrifying. I was going to say impressive, but it was terrifying because it was like 3 a.m. Me and Alex were both dead, and there's just this room full of Koreans shuffling papers, and they've got iPads and a projector, and like I said, a whiteboard, which the most impressive part of the whiteboard was like a photorealistic drawing of the map that somebody had done in whiteboard marker. And I don't know if you've ever tried to like write your name on a whiteboard, but it's surprisingly hard because you're writing on the wrong axis. You don't practice writing on something that's vertical. Anyway, he drew a perfect map and then started drawing arrows on it, and my mind was blown.
That coach probably writes the whiteboard every single day, so not hard for him.
Nothing is hard for that coach after they won the AWC. But that final was insane. Both those teams, as I said, are obviously the two best AOV teams in the world and in history. And they both deserve absolute credit. Thailand could have won that set. I mean, the way you know it's a great final, if it's a BO3 Korea win, if it's a BO5 Thailand win, because it's a BO7 Korea win.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, especially the twists and turns and the pinging back and forth as far as the game lead. But I just love the conflicting styles. And strangely enough, Korea was better as a team, I would say. And Thailand had like a very good individual players, which is not what you would expect with like an underdog story, quote unquote. I know that Thailand's not supposed to be the underdog, but traditionally in esports they would be by far the underdogs.
I would argue, and I would say Thailand were the expected winners just off of the boot camp results.
Right. I'm just saying in like esports history, I'm saying.
I would say Thailand are the best team fighting team currently playing AOV. And whenever they got a game where they managed to force Korea to say team fights, they won easily. And whenever Korea got a game where they managed to just disengage from the team fights, they won. And that's a really strange dynamic.
Right. Well, when I know people are going to get confused by my comment that Thailand had better individual play when they have good team fights, is because they have like really good mechanics as far as how to set up those teams and like kill people in those team fights. Whereas Korea, they worked off of each other by split pushing lanes and moving like as like this kind of weird, matrix of players where one person goes to the left and everyone knows what that person is doing, and so they do something else on the other side of the map. Whereas Thailand was very good at just like finding a situation where they could pick off someone and use their superior mechanics and ability, especially freaking me marks, might be the best player in the world, and just wipe someone out. And obviously they had great teamwork too. I mean, but just the individual play of them, I think, allowed for their team fights to be so successful.
It reminded me a lot of the old narrative, macro versus micro. Thailand looked insane every time it was a micro game. It was a game about individual engagements, mechanics, and positioning within a team fight. When it came to macro, map control, your knowledge of what the other team's doing, your overall team strategy, Korea excelled. And here, that was enough to win them, but it cannot be stressed enough. I think they won that grand final. I think they won that world championship by minutes. I think if that game goes 2 minutes longer, Thailand win.
Yeah, because Thailand was so good in the late game, especially when you get to the late game and everything is predicated on team fights and not, the busyness of macro where everyone's kind of split all over the map.
Now, we're a biased podcast.
Of course.
Let's talk about the West. One of the newer regions coming in, also one of the best funded esports regions. Europe went out of the group stage, North America got to the quarters.
I think they did fine. I think that they did exactly what's expected. In fact, we predicted exactly what would happen in our predictions podcast. We said Europe was going to be going out in group stages and America was going to get to the quarterfinals and lose. And that they did, and they lost to the best team. So, I don't know. You can't say too much bad about them. I mean, Europe did take a game off of China, I believe. And you can't ask too much more than that.
That Korea NA series was something.
Also, by the way, I went on a rant on this when I was streaming, but it bears repeating. They, in one of the games, I think they went like 18-0 and 0 towers lost. Like 9-0, 18-0, right? 9-0 towers, 18-0 in kills. Maybe not 9-0 in towers. They might have just won the game. But they lost the first Abyssal Dragon that game. So for all the people it ranked who, when they lose the Abyssal Dragon, they just type GG and then like 6 minutes, let's surrender. Watch that game.
Play like Korea. Sorry, what?
Look, it's fine to lose the Abyssal Dragon as long as you're getting stuff done on the other side of the map. And when you're the only one trying to contest the Abyssal Dragon, and you see people on your team doing stuff on the other side of the map, and they can't come or rotate to contest, just let it go. It's fine. The game is not over yet. Rant over. Sorry.
I was very impressed in particular with the NA team. Yes, that was a messy set versus Korea, and I certainly had a lot of fun casting it. I don't know if you caught that, Daniel. But yeah, I think overall they had a good performance, and it was a good bedrock. This is the first year of NA competitive play. What do you do next year? You're already one of the top 8 teams in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And I think that they will continue to rise. I don't know if we'll see them catch up to Korea, China, Taiwan, Thailand in the next year, if ever. But I think that they can be in the like next tier or, tier and a half down from the top teams.
Well, let's talk about the next year. We, in the AWC, got confirmation of the Asia International Championship sequel. It's going to be the Arena of Valor International Championship, and we got no details about it aside from that it's hosted this winter. I assume, this is assumption and nothing more, that there will be another season of regional competitive play, much like the one leading up to the AWC, and the winners will again go to the International Championship.
Right. We also know that's going to be in...
Sorry?
We also know that's going to be in Southeast Asia.
What are you thinking of coming into this event? Is there anything you're really keeping an eye on as a narrative? For me, actually, and we didn't even talk about it, for me, what's going on in Singapore? What esports steroids did they put the Singapore team on?
I was, I think part of it is that Team Tamago, who was the Singaporean team, they actually had time to practice with the new heroes, which, the team from the Philippines did get to do so. So I think that was part of the reason why, like, Philippines were just thrown into this boot camp, having never played these heroes before, and they just got completely crushed. And I think that that region is better than people think, and I definitely think that they're better than South America. They might be better than Indonesia, so they might be in like the lower level towards where
Like where
Europe
NA is.
kind of maybe around Europe is a bit
the
low.
category that's better than Europe. Sorry, I'm a bit salty about that, and I want to highlight Europe because Europe was riding high as the kings of the West. Yes, you didn't get Team Noob to the World Cup, but you're kidding yourself if you think Team Noob would have had a vastly different result. What happens next for European esports? Do you think they can overcome their, frankly, embarrassing results?
I think it's the same thing, that we talked about last time when we had Shozen on. And they need to get over themselves and really train and really try to get good. I think Europe has this kind of superiority complex, especially in the West, where they're like, oh, we own the West. And it's like, that's not really the case at the moment. You're just kind of worse than NA. I know that you got the game before them, but it's just really not the case. And they're going to have to really kind of step it up. And particularly the esports teams need to be kind of more regimented and get better. But I think they have the tools to do so. Especially because there's lots of pressure there. There's, Spanish teams like all over the place trying to climb up the ladder. There's obviously German teams and and Turkish teams. I think that there's a lot of competition, and I think the internal competition will help to make the top teams better. But the top right now is not so great. There's a lot of depth, but not a lot of good top teams.
Oh yeah. Well, then in one sentence, and it better not be a run-on, what's your general feeling about AOV esports coming out of the World Cup?
Okay. I feel good about... Oh, wait. This is going to be a run-on sentence. I feel pretty good about it coming out of the World Cup.
Do you want to write it down first?
Edit me, TJ. I think the direction coming out of the World Cup is good. There were decent number of viewers, especially on the English side. Not especially on the English side, but decent for the English side.
Was that a semicolon? Is this in parentheses?
Can I start over?
Yeah, sure.
I think the direction coming out of the World Cup is decent. It had okay numbers for the English side, definitely more than we've seen for an esports event so far. Semicolon, I guess. And the fact that it has established itself as an esports right now is really good, because when we go to the AIC, when we have additional third-party events, it will prove fruitful for AOV, I believe.
Questionable grammar for a full-time writer. That's all I'll say.
It's hard to cut it down to one sentence. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. We apologize again for the long delay, but there are no more urgent events coming up. I will be here. Next week, we'll be back with a Jump from the Valor series. He's the tall guy on the desk, and I can't wait for that. For now, thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at esportstj, and I'm on similar locations everywhere else, Twitter, Twitch, etc. You can find Daniel at DTwoHS on both Twitter and Twitch himself, and of course, he writes regularly for the SamuraiGamers.com website. You can also head over to sgaov.com for a specific link to the Samurai Gamers AOV wiki in particular. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. So after the NA and EU teams went home, there was nobody left who spoke English at a conversational level in the hotel with us. So what I took to doing, because I couldn't have conversations with the Korean or Thai players as I passed them in the hallways, what I took to doing was offering them high fives. Now, it's a kind of weird thing, because in Asian culture, and I didn't realize this, I guess high fives are just, like, not a thing. But they've seen enough Western media, they're aware of the concept of high fives, they know what to do. So they, like, give really weak high fives, where they're just, like, caressing your hands. But we sorted them out. And over the course of, like, a week, we got some crisp high fives happening. And by the finals, I had Asian team members running up to me to give me high fives.
You done it. You spread a high five to Asia.
Yes! And there is nothing quite like hearing somebody be like, "Oh, TJ, high five!" And you're like, "Yes!" And I had to think through it, because, like, I thought about fist bumps, but then I realized that like, looks vaguely threatening.
You, like, extend your fist up and they're like, "No, don't kill me."